Welcome to another track overview. This time it's on my piece First Flight, which you can listen to here. I'm not going through it in this video. And without further ado, let's go. So here we are in the session. And first of all, I want to dive a little bit into the synth that opens the piece. So this is a combination of 3 layers. The first one carries both the holding F and G, as well as the bass line melody, let's say. The second one only holds the chord tones. And finally, this one, which I have placed 4th for some reason, plays just the bass notes. So this way I can use multiple different synth sounds and samples to create my own sound and also decide which sound I wanted to play what note to create some diversity in that as well. Now let's go to the other instrument that carries the opening, which is the piano. So this piano part follows some very simple chords. Not even chords really, just 2 notes on the bass line. But the melody that's on top of it is developing slowly, going up more and more. And in the end, it comes to some kind of a climax, let's say. And this motion of ornamenting D and E flat before going down with C, B flat, G. This is one of the main melodic elements for later in the piece. And this piano sound is from Native Instruments Complete. It's called Alicia's Keys. And this is my go-to piano sound really, which I usually only use for sketching. But this time it suited itself really well for the sound on this track. And now we go to the next section, which is marked by a transition in a little instrument over here. And I can actually show you this one. That's these guys. Usually you play them like that. However, for this, I wanted some kind of a riser transition, so I recorded them like that. Recorded without effects, they sound like this. And then I add some EQ to cut out all the low and give the high a bit more emphasis. Then I add a little delay. Well, a little. Finally, reverb. And if you do that twice, and one I panned hard left and the other one I panned hard right, so in the end you have a stereo image of the finger cymbals. And in the mix, and the most compliments I've gotten about this track was about this solo violin, which I'm very happy with. It is the East West Gypsy's solo violin legato fast. It's not a legato patch in the sense that you can only play 1 note at a time. You can't do sustained notes 2 at a time. It's about the connection between the 2 notes that you can change with the mod wheel here. So here I play with the mod wheel up. And the notes follow each other immediately, while the mod wheel halfway up adds a nice portamento. So first of all, there's a huge big fat delay on this, as you might have noticed, and it's a ping pong delay, so it goes from left to right with each alternation changing the side of the stereo image. And I just want to dive into these little ornaments for a little bit, with these little notes, like let's say over here. If you just solo these ornaments, they don't sound really as if you are playing those notes. However, here it's all about the gesture it's making. So you do hear that's like this little ornament going around the notes without hearing exactly which notes they are. But that doesn't matter. To me, it's about the effect. It's about I want this ornament in the melody. And if it's not performed exactly as it is written here, or the sounds maybe a bit off, I like the way it sounds. And this is just a way of programming this ornament sounding. So I use this more often, so here as well, there is a very soft note just added here to enhance the melody, just to give a little bit of ornament, and I don't necessarily want to hear this note. It's just one of the tricks you can use to enhance your performance of the samples a little bit by using these tricks. So if you play them separately, but then in the mix, you hear like it's played as an ornament, but it's really free and doesn't have to be exactly how it's written. It's perceived as an ornament, and that way it has reached its goal. And now another percussion element I added is this low frame drum boom, and I've called it like that for a reason. Because it's actually this frame drum hit by this mallet. And if I remove all the effects, you can hear exactly how I recorded it. And if you listen to this sound and compare like what pitch it is, it's an E flat. So the first pitch shift down is to a C, because the piece is in C minor. Now we are in C. And then I pitch shifted it down again, 1 or 2 octaves. Finally, I add a bunch of effects, some EQ to cut out all the high, small delay, reverb, and I think here I corrected some of the low-end enhancement I did earlier, because it was a little bit much. And then finally it sounds like this. I really like it. I really do. The thing is, the fact that I can just record some instruments in my room and use them to create my own sonic booms in this case, or like small riser effects, and as you see later there are lots of other little elements. It's just so nice to pick up an instrument and turn it into a sound that only you have, that only you own. And however this is, you know, just a low boom, doesn't matter, it's my low boom and I'm really happy with it. So that's just some free advice if you have stuff lying around to use it. I want to dive into that a little bit more, because we've arrived in the first larger section where I want to dive into the percussion. This percussion is a mixture of sampled percussion, looped sampled percussion, as well as smaller instruments that I own myself and have recorded myself. So to get started with the sampled percussion, I have here a frame drum from Adagio. I love Adagio. And here in the sequencer you can make a pattern for yourself. This is the volume of the notes, and this is which notes you are selecting before it starts looping again. It's triggered to 16th notes. And I layer this with another instance of the low frame drum, but this time it's just a sampled instrument with a little bit of distortion on there as well. Then we go to the instruments I recorded myself. Let's first do the shakers. For this I use one regular, like an egg shaker, and this, which is a bag of like screws and bolts I used for my hardware rack. And I recorded it at half time, and then I doubled the speed of it. So I recorded it at half time to make sure that I got the rhythm and the accents right, and it's just a little bit tighter when you speed it up. And then I have this effect, which was the same principle with the speeding up, but then with just a regular like that. And I added some volume automation to make it like a riser into the next section. And then there's one more element. That one is this little man. I just like to record this. It's an extra live element, another human element, and while it doesn't sound, you know, really like big or epic, it does fill out a nice mid-frequency range. So I really love doing this and layering live elements that I recorded here with sampled elements to create kind of a human element into your tracks. Next up, we go to the Synth Bass, which is the driving force in this low end. And here I use the same principle as with the Synth Bass. So I layered a couple of them to create a sound I want. First one and the third one being kind of similar, having this grungy sound, while the second one really has this kind of a sub attack to it. And together they sound like this. So then the rhythm is carried as well by short strings. And the accents here, they are enhanced by low string effects. So it's a collegno, which is where the string player slaps its bow on the string. And a Bartok pizzicato, which is like a pizzicato where they pull the string and make it slap on the board. And for the strings in general in this piece, I use the same method I described in my orchestration hack video about short strings, which you can see up here. So now next up is the middle section, which opens with just a short violin, again an ornament, let's say. So this is basically the same chords as the opening section, or the synths come back in as well. However, now the synth bass is the leading instrument here, and it plays a little bit of a melody around the bass line. The piano plays an ornamented version of the notes of the opening. The chords underneath are the same, but the C, F, G chord is now embellished in the right hand. And then this movement is enhanced as well by now short strings going in a motive that is derived from the start. And this is doubled by women's choir staccatos. So here we go to the bridge, and this is the first time where we hear an actual melody. I play it in horns, trumpets, and cello. Each of them is played 3 times. One is just the melody, it's in the center. Then one is a couple of frames early, it comes in the left. And the other one is a couple of frames late, and it goes to the right. So you have a little bit of double tracking with the same take. However, it's timed slightly off, so you get some variation in it. And it's spread across the entire stereo image. Here I have the solo violin playing a countermelody as well, and I just want you to follow along and see what the volume automation is doing, because where the melody is going down or is on a long note, that's where I give this solo violin a little bit more movement and turn the volume of it up as well, and the other way around. So when the solo violin is starting to go to a long note, I turn it down and give the melody a bit more movement. So you see there's a dip here, and at the meantime there is a crescendo in the solo violin and the other way around. So here I take the violin down and I take the melody up. In the strings, there's a little bit of a motive introduced. This is something that will keep going throughout the piece, and I use it to add a little bit more to the final climax. If you're using short strings like this, it's a great way to introduce new kinds of elements throughout the piece so you can develop it, and so that it's not just the same material over and over again. So the end here is basically a climax repeating the material that we had when we first started going really rhythmical. A couple of things I want to dive into is there's an extra percussion layer. I think this is 8 DO toms, a little bit processed, with a layer of low drums and sticks. And as you can see, I often mute a lot of notes after I've written them to be able to have some more room to do more towards the end of a piece. So here you can see I used to have a lot of material here and I muted it. So basically I could do this. Only in the end is where I introduce it. So I give myself a little bit more room to develop it further when we are building to the real climax. Another thing that is added here is the low brass, enhanced by men's choir. which I like to do, add choir, to give a little bit more emphasis to this low C that starts off the entire thing. And these men are actually also there in the beginning, also to put some emphasis on the low notes that starts the thing off. Now in this female choir, you can see here I have actually loaded 3 of them, and if I play them you might be able to hear why. The first one is an E sound, the second more of an O, and the third is an A sound. I do this because in the end the choir is really, you know, overpowering everything, and if I would have one vowel repeated 3 times, it just becomes a little bit too much of the same sound, and I want a bit of variation. So that's why I loaded 3 different ones, because this library, East West Hollywood Choirs, it doesn't have a patch where you can switch between those kinds of vowels in staccato. First one is the E, second one is the A, and the final one is the O. I think the violin delay that I've been using through the entire thing really pays itself off just in these final 2 notes. I just love how this sounds. And that's it. I hope it was insightful. I hope you've learned something that you can use in your own compositions maybe. I really enjoy making these. If you like them as well, please show again. And if you would like to see more of these videos, do consider subscribing. And as always, from my space to yours, have a great day.